Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summit.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell. Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robert DeLaurentis. I'm on the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
And we're going to be talking about my 2018-2019 polar circumnavigation in an aircraft I've named the Citizen of the World. It's a global peace flight from the South Pole to the North Pole, and one of the many missions is to join everybody in between.
That's a big mission. Holy shit. We're at Phil's house. You probably can hear the pool trickling in the background because we like to do the show in beautiful places, and Phil's backyard is peaceful, to say the least. So thank you for hosting, Phil.
No problem.
And thank you for also co-hosting. It's just fun. I'll always love to have fellow hosts on the show, fellow friends, and and we'll probably get visited by Dave West at some point, so that's also exciting. So welcome, Dave, once you get here. And so you're flying an airplane pole to pole. You've done circumnavigation the latitude way, and now you're going to do the longitude way. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Yes. 1 point for me, Phil. So, okay. Why on earth would you fly an airplane from San Diego the hard way up and over the top of the poles through all that bad weather and everything else? Why?
Well, I think it's the greatest thing you can actually do with a plane. You can't take it out of the atmosphere because it needs oxygen. And I've already done, the equatorial circumnavigation. And it turns out that very few people have actually done a South Pole to North Pole circumnavigation, and it's many, many times more difficult. It sort of took, the last trip, and I kind of look at that as a warm-up for the big one, and this is the big one.
So everybody who wants to find out about you is going to go to poletopoleflight.com, and you can reach Robert at Flying Through Life. Through is THRULIFE. So Flying Through Life is where you find him on Twitter. He will interact with you. The website, of course, again, is flyingthroughlife.com. Facebook, YouTube, Google+, all these places. If you look through at Flying Through Life, you will find Robert's information and materials. You've also written 2 books that are sitting here in front of me. One is called Zen Pilot, Flight of Passion. And the other one's called Flying Through Life, How to Grow Your Business and Relationships with Applied Spirituality. Whoa, wait, Applied Spirituality. I want to get back to the pole-to-pole thing, but what's applied spirituality?
Applied spirituality is applying spiritual concepts in your life. And in the case of Flying Through Life, a lot of it is focused on business. And, it's very easy to read a book or go to a presentation, hear about all these different spiritual concepts. Most of them have been around for thousands of years. But, actually applying them in your life and then getting results is a whole nother story. I got an advanced graduate degree in spiritual psychology. It was a 3-year degree. And as we were learning these concepts, I started thinking, well, I could, use that in my business and, probably have some positive change. So in the book, there are 19 different concepts that I detail. And it's just a really simple way to apply those concepts in your life. And I should say, too, that, once I started doing that, within 3 years, that business that I had tripled in size.
Whoa.
They're legitimate results, and it really works. And, rather than just talk about the concepts, I decided to do this equatorial circumnavigation in a plane that we named the Spirit of San Diego. And the goal was to show people that the concepts worked. I didn't want to just talk about it. I wanted to say, you know what, I've done this, and these are the results. And anybody can do it. That's what I'm trying to share. And, the profits for these books, they go to different scholarship funds. One of them is the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association scholarship fund by the name The Spirit of San Diego. And for the new trip, it'll be the Citizen of the World. And then we also donated some money to the Lindbergh Schweitzer Elementary School. So I'm not making money on this. It all goes to a 501c3. And we're trying to inspire kids to learn how to fly. Because the industry is composed of a lot of, 40 to 60 gray-haired guys like me.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have started earlier, and I'm hoping that maybe some of this will inspire younger people to start.
let's go back. Tell us the name of the charity, because one of the things we do here is we align ourselves with Charity on Top. And I do what I call micro donations. I try to give at least a few dollars for every organization that comes across the Break It Down show airwaves. And so I will definitely be giving a little bit of money. But tell us what it is, and I'm going to do it through Charity on Top because they're our partner charity agent. But go ahead and tell us what it is again.
All right, so there's the DeLaurentis Foundation.org. And, we have different products. We're not necessarily just looking for cash handouts, although we'll certainly take them,
Yeah.
But we have different products that we're selling, that I think are really pretty cool. But on the first trip, the money went to the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, which is a major organizing, entity in general aviation. And the name of the fund was the Spirit of San Diego, which was the name of the aircraft. And we also donated an equal amount to the Lindbergh Schweitzer Elementary School. And for this next trip, it looks like the name of the fund is going to be the Citizen of the World, again named after the plane.
Okay.
So we're starting there. This is a much more complicated trip, much more expensive, so we're raising more money for this.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be expensive. The Lindbergh Schweitzer, is that Albert Schweitzer? It's got to be, right? If you're going to name something Lindbergh, and you got to bring a peer to the party.
My understanding was it was named after the guy who designed the helicopter by the same name.
Oh, okay. Well, all right, so 2 aviation names.
Yeah.
And is Ted Williams the most successful, notable pilot from San Diego?
No, I would say Charles Lindbergh.
Yeah? All right. I guess it's close, though, right?
Well, it's funny because Charles Lindbergh actually lived near Balboa Park, where
Okay.
I live, and I walk through the park and I think about him. I go there for inspiration. His aircraft, the Spirit of St. Louis, was actually built in San Diego.
Oh, no kidding.
So, just actually over on, right across the water there. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of aviation history in San Diego.
Yeah.
It is called Lindbergh Field.
It is called Lindbergh Field.
Well, it's now San Diego International, because I guess that wasn't politically correct at some point, but, it was always Lindbergh Field to me.
That's how I know it.
Yeah.
They unnamed it.
Yeah, apparently.
Why did Lindbergh do something bad at some point to somebody?
He became a politician, I think. A job where you get a lot of...
You make a lot of people mad.
a lot of
You know what?
people
San Diego loves unnaming things, too, because it's no longer Jack Murphy Stadium. It's the stadium paid for.
Qualcomm, right?
Yeah. Chicago tried that with Soldier Field. And no, that's come on. So, but Ted Williams is in the Flying Hall of Fame, is an ace pilot.
I didn't know that about
one
him.
of the best fighter pilots ever. And that's Chuck Yeager would even say, he was a top-notch pilot.
Wow. I didn't know that about him.
So they're both fantastic pilots, I guess you would say. Yeah. He's also in the Sport Fishing Hall of Fame and, of course, the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Yeah.
He sounds like a real
yeah,
inspiration for you.
he was a Hall of Fame collector.
So you mentioned that you wish you had started flying younger. What's the typical age that someone starts flying younger? I have 4 kids, and if my 10-year-old came to me and said, "Hey, I want to start flying," I'd look at him and go, "What, are you crazy?" But is that what's a typical age that someone would actually start taking flying lessons?
About 18. Well, you can start before then, but to get your license, I believe it's 18 years old. But it's amazingly expensive. It's not what it used to be. So, to rent a plane, you're probably looking at around $100 an hour. An instructor's probably going to cost you $60. And then if you're a great, pilot, if you have that natural ability, you're probably looking at least 40 hours of flight time. A lot of that with an instructor. For me, I think it took 50 or 60 for that first license. So you got to be prepared to, pull out your checkbook or have a job if you're a young kid, and save your money. Not easy. And the problem is that there's so many other options for young kids. They can go play their video games that are pretty amazing now. And in the 2 planes that I mentioned, we've always made an effort to have the latest, greatest technology of the day. So I like to say that I can rival any video game with the panels on my planes. And they include everything from synthetic vision, which is digitizing the surface of the Earth. It's kind of like you're actually flying in it. Almost like a cartoon, So you're flying along, and on the right side you'd see a mountain or you'd see a river, and it's really there, We have a Bluetooth connection between the Garmin. I have Garmin now. I'll have Avidyne, I think, in a little bit here, but Bluetooth connection between the GPS and your iPad. I have satellite weather, music, communications in the cockpit. You have touch screen, digital displays. I mean, if you're a button pusher, and I'm a button pusher because I like the technology.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have one great time just pushing buttons. In fact, there's a saying, you get so enticed by the avionics, you don't even want to look out the window because you don't need to. But it is important, to look out the window a lot.
So, okay, yeah, looking out the window is important. Let's talk a little bit about the project, because I know I'm dying to know, how long do you expect it to take to go from San Diego, North Pole, South Pole, San Diego?
Well, it really depends on what your goal is. You could probably do the trip if, you had minimal rest time, stop time, and just literally stopped, fueled, rested, and went.
Yeah.
And did very, very long, challenging legs. You could probably do it in 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to do it in 3 months.
Okay.
And the reason is because in that weight class, which I believe is C1F, there are no circumnavigations over the poles. So it'll set a record no matter what, no matter how long I take. It's
right.
Speed and distance over the poles. And, the mission is not just to set a record, because records get broken, and it's an awful lot of resources just to set a record. So the goal is to stop in many, many places along the way, to lecture a lot, to have one hell of a good time.
Yeah.
Right? And meet as many people as I can. And part of the reason I've named it the Citizen of the World is I did a blog back in 2015. And on that trip, when I stopped in 23 countries, you come to realize that people are more similar than different.
For sure.
So we all want the health and safety of our family. We want financial security. We want, peace. We don't want to live in fear. We want joy and happiness, right? And the things like, your religion, your political affiliation, the color of your skin, your socioeconomic class, they don't matter as much, because you start to see that everybody is really just one. And for our trip, we have a phrase that we use. It's one planet, one people, one plane. And it's oneness for humanity. So the other thing is a plane doesn't know boundaries. So you're flying, between one country and the next. It's not like there's this line, you look down out the window and you see a line that you cross. The weather doesn't know the boundaries.
Right.
People you can't even keep people within a country anymore, right? They move too. So you just start to see that the planet is just one big mass of people. We're technically world citizens, and it's only the boundaries that human beings put together that start to divide us, Yeah, and, along the way, I hope to do some interviews. I want to interview different people and talk to them, and I think what I'm going to find is just what I've said, that we care about the same things.
Yeah. Well, I've been to a lot of countries myself, worked and talked to people. That's part of my job. And one of the things I always say, like I'm in Iraq and I go to Afghanistan and my peers that are there say, oh, they're totally different places. And I'm like, no, they're not. They all love their kids. They all hate cancer, and they just want to get by. That's common. If someone comes knocking and is a good guest, they want to feed them and take care of them and show them their space, their world. Everybody wants that.
Yeah.
You can legitimately experience that in any nation you go to. Yes, you can find bad people, but we can go in 5 minutes from here and find bad people, and it's lovely where we are right now. So I love the mission of trying to look at people as citizens of the world. 3 months to fly, San Diego, North Pole, South Pole, San Diego again. And then when you go to do that, what's the longest stretch where you're like, this is the one where, is it over the North Pole? Is it over the South Pole? Because you can't just land on Vinson and, be like, hey, I'm going to pull into the gas station here at the tallest mountain in Antarctica,
Well, the joke is I can land anywhere once.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
The longest, hardest leg will be over Antarctica at the South Pole. I've already flown very close to the North Pole, and, there are commercial flights flying there every day.
Right.
Actually, a lot of times every day. The South Pole is very unique, though. If you were to leave from Punta Arenas, Chile, which is the southernmost part of, South America, and fly directly to the pole and back, you're looking at about 4,500 nautical miles.
Wow, it's a long way.
That's a long way. That's like going from San Diego to Honolulu and back nonstop.
Yeah.
And, when you look at the plane, the Citizen of the World, it's not a 747, or a 787.
Yeah.
This is a plane you can buy any citizen could buy that plane.
It looks like a Sherpa a little bit, because a Sherpa is a wing over 2-engine plane that you could put a Land Cruiser in the back of and a bunch of SEALs. And it just can go high, and it carries a lot of weight like a Sherpa. So,
well, this plane, the militaries in Colombia and Panama use this plane, not modified like this, but I believe they get about 11 people in there. Right now it's set up to fit maybe 8 or 9, but I promise you that plane is going to be a flying gas tank.
yeah.
And we're adding 6 extra fuel tanks, another approximately 950 gallons of Jet A fuel. So it'll take us up to about 1,402 gallons. And that will extend the range to 5,000 nautical and about 24 hours in the air.
Oh, wow.
And to get that plane to do that, I'm just telling you a small portion of the modifications. We have brand new or newly refurbished Honeywell TPE 331-10Ts. And
Everybody has those, though.
yeah,
Come on.
to an aviation geek, that just sent a thrill up their spine, because that engine is got the newest technology. It's designed to fly very, very high and produce a lot of horsepower. So we also modified the plane. Instead of flying at 28,000 feet, it can go up to 35,000.
Yeah.
It's more efficient. And then those huge 5-bladed custom nickel-tip scimitar composite MT props are the latest technology of the day. And besides looking really sexy,
Yeah, they are sexy.
they work really, really well. And the prop is designed to take off, to climb out faster because it has more blades. It's actually cruises faster too, which the old belief was the fewer blades, the faster cruise. It's not true with these. They're lighter, they start faster, and they have more ground clearance. They're 50% quieter, and the vibration that the plane was known for before went away. So... And then the other thing is this iteration of this plane, it's the Gulfstream version, or the last one that was built. And Bob Hoover flew the smaller piston version. But this Gulfstream version, they extended the wing by 10 feet. And it has winglets. So for 1983, when this thing was built, to have a winglet on a plane was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And, Gulfstream's known for some good technology. They did other improvements. They increased the pressurization so you could fly higher. They dropped the floorboard. There's a lot of modifications that they made, but we're putting in an HF radio for talking, at 1 to 2,000 nautical miles away, and then that panel is, like I said, it's cool for kids. But oh, by the way, it can do a lot of things. For example, when you lose your navigation over the poles, all those meridians that connect, it confuses your GPS. So for about 50 nautical miles, your GPS goes away, and your magnetic compass is worthless. So there's what's called a directional gyro, which is basically a metal ball that spins at like 15,000 RPMs, kind of like a top, and it allows you to steer that course when you lose, your navigation. And then recently I found out that if you put a waypoint before the pole and after the pole and directly through it, the line connects, then the GPS still should work. But I need a backup plan.
Sure.
And
What's your contingency when the gyroscope gets knocked over when you go to grab your coffee?
I have a lot of backups, okay?
Uh-huh.
So most people don't realize it, but, an iPad mini is probably one of the greatest contributions to aviation in a very long time. And I've talked to Apple about that. They're going to be, helping us to get the word out. But this iPhone 10 that I have here can do everything my iPad mini can. And I have to tell you, on my first trip, the GPS units that I had the data got corrupted. And, when you're sitting on the tarmac, you've paid your exorbitant fees, everybody's split, burning fuel. It took, 2 hours to get fueled. There's no way you're going to get a Wi-Fi connection to any data source. And even if you did, in that case, it didn't fix it. So I used my iPad to navigate all the way from Malta to Egypt.
I love Malta.
Malta's
I love
beautiful.
Egypt too. But Malta's awesome.
Yeah. So, the technology is very redundant. And I'll have 2 GPS units. I'll have my iPad, my iPhone, and, a radio is a pretty powerful tool too, because they can vector you.
I'm going to say these words because I want to make sure I plug these guys. I love what they do, but also it could be a resource for you, and you guys may be able to partner. But there's a company called Spire.com, and they put CubeSats into low Earth orbit.
Okay.
And one of the things they do is they're able to pinpoint all commercial and private jets, ships everywhere, and so maybe they can help you plot and be a backup. I don't know, maybe not, but either way, what they do is pretty cool because they use what used to be ballast on rockets, and they put their CubeSats in that ballast area, and they're finding incredible areas where they can create business and data for people. So it could be a good partner. I'm not letting Phil ask any questions right now, so I'm going to shut up.
One last point, the satellite texting device that I use also, has some charts on there. And since I've had a lot of time in a plane thinking about what could go wrong,
right.
When you send out a text message or you post to social media from that device, the people that get it can click on a link and it shows a map and it shows exactly where you are. So let's say, everything else hit the fan, your panel went blank, you still have this handheld device that's just a little bigger than your cell phone. Somebody could text you, hey, 5 degrees to the right and you'll make it to Paris. Can you imagine if Lindbergh had that?
My goodness, yeah. How about JFK Jr.? Keep your head on straight, Jay. Yeah, it's crazy. Go ahead, Phil.
You have all these redundant systems, but you were saying that there's that 50 nautical mile area where your GPS doesn't work. So do you prepare for that? And so, I'm not a pilot, but I would anticipate that you prepare for the worst every time so that you're not, you can maintain your heart rate and you don't freak out and you just, oh, okay, that failed. All right, just go into my contingency plan and I've already practiced this, right? So is there a way that you can practice that non-GPS navigation, or do you just, trust your instruments and move forward?
Well, there's a reason why my book's called Zen Pilot. It's a lot about the spiritual lessons you learn from flying, but maintaining what I call a Zen cockpit keeps you in a state of mind where you're not using your reptile brain, right? And you're making rational, it's kind of like you're in a boardroom, right? And you got other people and you're considering what they're sharing and you're rationally thinking. So certainly keeping your wits is critical in a cockpit. In terms of practicing, there's simulators, Gleim Aviation, who I've just done a Overcoming Fear video for, that's going to go out to 26,000 high schools, STEM high schools, all have a Gleim simulator that I can use, and they're readily available, so we can program in some of the stuff. My hope is that they will program all the challenges that I'll have potentially over the South Pole into that simulator. So whiteout conditions, landing on an ice runway, loss of navigation, fuel gelling where you lose both engines. So yeah, there's a lot of planning that goes into this. I'll actually sit in the cockpit seat and close my eyes and try and anticipate problems and then react. Okay, like the cockpit's filling up with smoke, or I just lost my navigation, or I've had to ditch the plane. I'll have an AM-safe airbag, but a lot of times people will break ribs, so you got to get out of your seatbelt. And can you imagine twisting out with broken ribs? A lot of people will break their thumbs on impact, so because they don't remember to take their thumbs off the yoke.
Right. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of preparation that goes into a trip like this. Those things don't scare me. What scares me are the things you can't anticipate or you don't anticipate. Because then, you're relying on your training, your instincts. I have a strong spiritual belief that if this is supposed to happen, it will. And in Zen Pilot, the joke that I make is you can cheat death once and you're lucky. You can cheat death twice and you're really lucky. If you cheat it 5 or 6 times, you need a better explanation. So that's what that book's really about.
I need a better explanation. So, okay, let me ask you this. Okay, so you're going to fly around the planet, and you're going to go the north ways because going around the hip was just too easy for you. Although you said you almost you had a big, huge mechanical failure in that.
Well, I didn't say it was easy. I just said it was a warm-up.
I was setting you up.
Okay. Yeah, I had an engine failure, and I was 14,000 feet over the Strait of Malacca. In fact, this is exactly how Zen Pilot Flight of Passion, the Journey Within starts. So, you open it up and you're like, oh my God, from the very first page. But, I was flying 14 feet over the Strait of Malacca, and quite honestly, flying over the water is something that scares a lot of pilots and people. And the absolute worst thing that I could think of happened. The engine lost oil pressure, and the prop went flat because it needs oil pressure to have the pitch to go forward. And I saw this yellow oil pressure light flicker, which I'd never seen before. And before I could even get the words out, "Oh God," I slammed up against the seat belts, and my body sort of twisted to the right. And I looked over at the co-pilot's seat, and my first thought is, "Oh my God, I'm alone." And the vibration on the engine, because it's overspeeding at that point, is enormous, and it just sounded like it was going to blow itself to bits. It's an aluminum engine, which can burn.
Right.
I've got 100 extra gallons or 600 pounds of fuel. Literally, I can touch the tank behind me. And, I look up at the GPS. I hit direct to nearest airport. It says Kuala Lumpur International, 19.6 nautical miles. I turn towards the airport, and they say aviate, navigate, communicate. So I'm flying, which is aviating. Navigating is turning to the left. And then the air traffic controller comes on and says, "What are you doing?" Because they can see me turning off course. I said, "I've had an engine failure. I need a vector to the nearest airport." And, they're confused, maybe more than me. And they try and send me back to the airport I left from. And I know from my calculations I can do 14,000 feet, maybe 2 nautical miles per 1,000 feet. That would give me 28 nautical miles. And I'm not 100% sure it was at 14. It was 12 to 14. So worst case, 24 nautical. And I've got 19.6 to go, but I've got a flat prop.
Yeah.
Those numbers are calculated with the pitch, no resistance on the prop. So now, and I'm overweight by 600 pounds, right? So all of a sudden, what I know I can't rely on. So I have to make this decision, and the sweat is dripping off down my back. It's primitive, right? It's like survival instincts. I'm in my reptilian brain where I don't want to be. And I have to make a decision. Do I ditch in the Strait of Malacca, where I know there are ships, but that's my greatest fear? Do I take the chance of flying over the dense jungles of Malaysia, which is another really bad outcome, because when you hit a 100-foot tree, doing 100 knots, it's like hitting a wall.
Yeah.
So then I go, well, can I make it to the airport? And in that split second, I had to decide. And there's that time of confusion. I think Sully Sullenberger talked about it, like 30 seconds or a minute. And, that's what I was experiencing. So I decided to go for it, to go for the airport. And, you're entered into a cosmic negotiation. It's almost, like in a negotiation, you always ask for it all, and then you usually end up somewhere in between. Well, my options were, destruction of the plane, my death; destruction of the plane, I'm injured; destruction of the plane, I walk away; or the plane survives, I survive. That would have been the get everything. And I was thinking, man, I'm going to end up somewhere in the middle, and none of those are good outcomes. So when I made it, I had probably an extra 300 feet of altitude. Otherwise, I would have landed short. And when you think about, flying almost 20 nautical miles, which is like 22 miles, right, and having an extra 300 feet, that's close. And it led me to believe that, maybe this happened for a reason, and maybe I needed to share what I had learned, which in the book are called Zen moments.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
And maybe I needed to share what I had learned, which in the book are called Zen moments, So, I had, going through my mind is, oh my God, this plane is trying to kill me. And when I look back at it, one of the Zen moments is, it wasn't trying to kill me, it kept me alive. So anyway, this all started because life was going pretty good for me. I was making some money. I finally had the time and money to fly. And I had this thought, maybe I should take some time off. I can be thankful, or I am thankful, and I'll lecture and write for a couple years. But I didn't really want to, because I wasn't a writer, I wasn't a speaker. So I made an impossible request of the universe. And I thought, okay, if the universe gives me all this stuff, then I'll do it. But it's so hard, it can't happen, And the 3 requests were, I had vacancies in my apartment buildings. I needed those to go away. I had a building that had just burned, and all the tenants were in, emergency Red Cross places, and that was going to be a nightmare, in terms of dealing with, finding them places, but also how do you pay for this? And then the final thing was I had a house that I needed to sell that was costing me a lot of money, and I hadn't been able to sell it for 3 years. So within 2 weeks, my vacancies went away. I got a check from the insurance company, and they agreed to pay the rent for a year. And the house, I got an all-cash offer. And then in the next 2 months, I had another 8 financial windfalls. So everything from a buddy of mine who owed me money who had passed away, his family sent me a check after 2 years. Somebody had promised me some support on my graduate education and decided they didn't want to do it. They changed their mind. Got a tax refund. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I couldn't explain it. And I knew I had to fulfill my obligation.
That's heavy.
That's heavy.
So when you say 300 feet, that's vertical feet?
Yeah.
Which translate into distance what?
I don't know, maybe a quarter mile.
So a quarter mile. So what was a quarter mile short of that runway?
It was not asphalt,
So, there's no way you could put that plane down anywhere but the runway.
I could have put it down there, but there would have been damage. And, there are not a lot of Piper dealers anywhere but in the United States. There's a few locations like in Switzerland. But, how are you going to get that plane out of there? Who's going to fix it? Is it going to be airworthy? All, major questions. And, it just so happens on the Malibu Mirage, the wingspan was so great that it wouldn't fit in a shipping container. So you couldn't ship it home, not easily,
Right, so
without doing damage.
If there was damage to the plane would have to, ship parts in and,
You'd have to fly a mechanic in. And, when you're doing modifications to the actual plane, that's a big deal. You need people to sign off on that. The work has to be perfect. It has to be as strong as it was. Otherwise they just trash it. And, quite honestly, I doubted myself at the time. I was kind of like, okay, I had enough. That was really traumatic. I was having, some amount of post-traumatic stress after that. And I actually have video of it. Some of it's online. But I just was thinking, maybe this wasn't meant to be, And
then help me out here, because when you started telling the story, or maybe I lost track, you were flying and you said nearest airport, and they said go to Malacca, whatever, International. And then they're like, no, go back to the other airport. Which airport did you go to? Did you go back, or did you proceed to the next airport?
Well, I'd left from Subang International, which is in Malaysia. And the air traffic controllers that I was talking to, I said, hey, I've got an engine out. I'm at this altitude or, hereabouts. I need a vector, meaning give me the straightest course to the nearest place I can land. And they gave me a vector back to Subang International where I left from, and I knew I couldn't make it that far. That was way further.
Does that turn also cost you distance as well?
Oh, yeah. And so the GPSs of today, they have a function. It's a D with an arrow through it. That means direct to. So, most people are trained in a plane know, okay, hit the direct to, and then there's different options. One of them is nearest airport. And hopefully that airport has a runway that's long enough. And you pre-program in what airports you want to show up. So at the very top of it, it said Kuala Lumpur International. It's actually Kuala Lumpur International 2, which is where the 737s fly out, the discount airlines. So then I said negative. I can't make it that far, I need a vector. So then they gave me a vector to Kuala Lumpur International, but it was 45 degrees behind the airport.
I got to interrupt you and ask, because I know, like, my GPS will make suggestions that make no fucking sense. Like, do you mean Escondido? You're like, no, god damn it, I'm not even 500 miles from Escondido. Or why, Tennessee, no, never. So does yours give a bullshit when you're like that? Like, that's the last thing you need right now is an option that says Escondido?
I think the standard for aviation GPSs is higher.
Okay.
And they're better.
Okay.
And I've never had one. Actually, I can't say that. I have had it do some stuff before, but it's very, very rare. It's not like when you're, driving to Encinitas or Katy or wherever you might be going. So generally it's good, and I have enough of the GPS units I can cross-check. Sometimes waypoints, there's multiple ones by the same name, so you have to pick the one. Like SLI or Sierra Lima, India, Seal Beach, I believe, has multiple, and you just go, no, this is the one in California. And the Avidyne system that I'll hopefully be installing in the plane, it'll only give you choices in your area. So it's not going to give you a choice, that's in China when you're flying in California.
Right.
So they're pretty smart.
By the way, Dave West has arrived.
Hey, Dave.
We're talking to Robert DeLaurentis, who's going to fly from San Diego northward over the North Pole, and then all the way
south first.
So sorry, south under the South Pole, up over the North Pole, and back to San Diego.
All right.
Yeah.
Out of San Diego.
Yeah, I'm based out of San Diego. In fact, on my last trip around the equator, I left from San Diego Internationally, formerly Lindbergh Field, which, you can't just fly in there if you're a general aviation pilot. You have to have a legitimate reason. So I've tried a few times, and they said no. Well, this time I had a reason. And it's a good airport because it has a very long runway, and it's at sea level, so the air is very dense. And I had a support system there. There was a fixed base operator, or a place you basically depart from, that's kind of like a mini terminal. And at the time it was Landmark, but now they're Signature Aviation. And, they supported me. They helped. We did some events, press conference type stuff. Yeah, San Diego is the start and the end. And then my first plane was the Spirit of San Diego. And they actually did a proclamation on that to establish a Spirit of San Diego Day. So, that'll be forever, which is kind of cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of history.
So on this flight, you're going to be solo the whole time?
Most of the time. Actually, up until recently, it was going to be solo because the fuel tanks needed the co-pilot seat, to get up to the 1,402 gallons.
Are you going to wear a backpack, like a camelback with fuel in it, just in case?
I'd stick it in my pockets if I needed to.
Yeah.
The last guy that did the trip brought no survival gear because he figured an extra gallon of gas was worth more, or aviation fuel was worth more than, a survival raft or something. I'm going to have a raft because this plane is capable of, carrying a little more weight.
Yeah.
But, it's mentally, too, it's not cool to be next to a metal tank with fuel in it, It's fatiguing. It's not comfortable. I do have one or two people that are planning on joining me at different points. My mentor who flew on my first trip as well for a few countries. And, quite honestly, we're looking for a celebrity to ride along.
Nice.
On a leg. And we were hoping to sell that seat because it's an enormously expensive trip. If Harrison Ford wants to come along or more.
Well, hold on. Harrison Ford, just for your benefit, off the list. John Denver also would be off the list if he was still with us. How about Lorenzo Lamas? Safer, younger.
I would consider Lorenzo Lamas. How about
and great hair?
What do they need to weigh in at, though?
Oh yeah,
Angelina Jolie would be a better option. She's smaller,
yeah,
more attractive.
The Fonz. Get Henry Winkler. He's tiny. Tom
Cruise is small too, so
he tried to jump
he
out.
would not contribute to your weight
because he does his own stunts.
That's right. It would be a potential opportunity to jump out, but with those big 5-bladed props right before or behind the
Jinkies.
hatch, yeah, that's not a good option.
Yeah.
I would say you'd be safer inside the plane.
Safer inside the plane. So, okay, you're going to have some people join you along the way. And then when you're solo and you're flying, how long are these legs? I mean, do you have time where you're like, I am going to play some Sega since I got this great display in front of me? Or what do you do to occupy your time when you don't have to do every single bit of the flying?
That's a good question. I actually stayed really busy on my first trip. The longest leg on that was 12 and a half hours, the Honolulu to Monterey. On this one, we're thinking 17 and a half. But potentially 24, worth of fuel that we can carry. So, you're doing everything from staying hydrated, eating, watching your engine temperatures, logging key temperatures to see if something's changing, right? Navigating, calculating your fuel load. I must have done that 100 times on that Pacific crossing that I did. Looking out the window, taking pictures. We'll have a air sensor pod that holds 4 GoPros, and we hope to be taking a picture every minute for the entire trip. And they're oriented every 90 degrees. So and then fuel management, right? Because I'm going to have 6 fuel tanks, so I'll be aligning fuel tanks and letting the pressurization in the cabin exert pressure on that to push it up into the wing. So I would say if you had a lot of extra time, you're missing something. It's a very stressful. The other ones, I've done similar legs. The first plane was a single-engine piston plane, and a turbine engine is 100 times more reliable, and I have 2 of them. But if you get into a situation over the South Pole, like we were monitoring temperatures the year before, and at 35,000 feet, assuming I can get that high with that extra fuel weight, we're probably looking at minus 67 Celsius. And the plane's been flown by other, not my plane, but similar planes at like minus 53. So that would be too cold. The fuel would potentially gel, and then you would lose both engines. So I have to fly lower, which is less efficient. And, temperatures aren't the same every single day. So there's a lot of things to be keeping track of. I'll be posting via the satellite texting device. Certainly for the sponsors that I have, a post from the South Pole is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And if you think about a company like, let's just randomly pick MT Propeller, to be able to say, hey, we've gone to the ends of the earth to test this equipment, and we put these propellers in the harshest...
So you're saying the earth is flat?
Yeah. Maybe I'll have a really earth-shattering post from there. But, being able to say, hey, we've tested this to the ends of the earth, and in the worst conditions possible, it's performed. So there's a huge value to sponsors because if they wanted to go take them to the South Pole, they get to pay for everything, not just, help with the props. So, yeah, it's there's a lot of things going on. And then we're carrying an experiment that will eventually be carried by NASA and the Amazon Blue Origin's rocket. It's basically a miniature wafer-size spacecraft. And what they're moving towards now, instead of building rocket ships with engines, right, because you got to carry the engine into space too, they have these very small miniature spacecraft, and they'll use an electromagnetic system to propel it out into space. So that way you don't have the engine with you, and they can launch these. It takes the same amount of energy, believe it or not, but they can launch these every 15 minutes.
It's a railgun launch system then.
Yeah, kind of like that.
The problem with railguns, I thought, was that they were so powerful that the rest of the energy has to go somewhere, so it goes into destroying the gun each time.
Oh.
Are they able to, I guess, maybe just reassemble it pretty fast, though, right?
This is in the future, so maybe they're working towards that, or maybe they have a solution.
In the future, I'm skinnier.
I'm more charming, better looking, more hair,
That's not possible.
flatter stomach.
Come on, Robert. You're already charming.
Okay, well, maybe not that, but the rest of it I'll take. Yeah.
So in preparation, so it sounds like you're doing the hard part first, right?
Yes.
Going over the South Pole. But can you talk about the preparation? So every stop that you're going to make, you got to do some legwork about where you're going. You got to, I'm sure you have to file something, but then also you said you're going to do some speaking and things like that, right? So can you talk a little bit about what that looks like as far as, the preparation for identifying the location that you're going to be at, and then, lining up both on the flight plan side as well as, the off the runway stuff?
Let me start by making a comment, because you hit something that's very important. The hardest leg in the first part of the trip, because on my last trip, the Honolulu to Monterey was the hardest last leg. So you get to worry about it for the entire trip. And there's a phrase, I don't know if it's real or not, but I call it cumulative fatigue. So, you get more and more tired as the 3 months pass. The plane is not operating as well as it does in the beginning because it's a machine and it degrades. So the idea was to knock this hard part out first, and then it would be easier and the stress would be off. So that's the intention behind that. And then flying from the south to the north is going up, it's elevating, there's a lot of positive things associated with that as opposed to going down. But in terms of the preparations, the first trip I prepared for 6 months, this one I'm preparing for 1.5 years. And that'll give you an idea of the difficulty, of this trip compared to the last one. And it's not just the plane. If you go to that website, there's all the modifications that we're making. And, that's a lot of time and money to get that stuff in the aircraft. The feasibility studies, can the wing hold that much weight? Where are we going to position the fuel tanks? What does the panel look like? And then does it work, right? Because there's debugging that goes with everything you put in to a plane. That's just the plane, right? And then in terms of me as a pilot, I had, cataract surgery. They replaced the lenses, your actual lenses in your eyes. So I had that done early because I could go and do a refractive surgery, and then in 5 years, I'd have to do the cataract surgery. So I did it early, and I had one eye set to close so I can look at the panel, and one eye set at distance. And the lenses are called crystal lenses, and they actually can focus, which is a very new technology. They don't do it completely, so that's why they have to set one near and one far. But I wanted to be prepared. If I drop my glasses, can I still see? What if I dropped them and broke them?
You have a contingency for your vision.
Yeah.
I know we're all cyborgs, but you're really taking that shit to the extreme.
Going all the way. And then like these sunglasses, these were designed just for me. They're shade and Zens, but see the bottom lens? It's clearer on the bottom because you don't need filtration to see your panel. Up near the top, it's darker, so when you're flying under the clouds and there's not as much light, they're up. When you break through the clouds and it's really bright, you flip the top ones down, and now all of a sudden you've got double the filtration, right? So the whole ice blindness thing hopefully will be handled with these.
Wait a second, you said hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah.
There's not a lot of hope, though. You're
not a hope guy. Yeah,
you're not a hope guy.
I'm not a hope guy.
You're prepared and you test, and you know that's going to happen.
Well, I also have another couple lenses that I could
there
flip
we go.
over the top.
I knew it.
Maybe I didn't mention that the first time. The other thing, though, is you attempt to mitigate your risk, and you do everything you can. You think through it. You have the best equipment and technology. You practice, but then there's some amount of risk that you can't mitigate, and at some point you decide to either accept it or bail on the trip, So
when you so you're going to head south. And first off, I want to just say, I cannot, my brain knows, but my other brain, my dumb guy brain, goes, man, it sucks to fly upside down for half the world. I just cannot make my brain not have you go upside down.
Well, that's why I stand on my head for a
you
few
do
hours.
an inverted roll or something, because you'd be down, and Dave can't believe it, but it is true. I no brain. That's not right. I know.
You've
It's
heard about
just
the
so weird.
no-brainer, right? Maybe that's what it's all about.
But okay, so you go through the hardest stretch. You go over the South Pole. Now, are you going to stop and do a talk down in the South Pole to all the doctors that are down there? And
no, because there's white ice and blue ice runways, and actually, right now I'm forgetting which is which, but one of them you can land with a wheeled vehicle, and other ones you need skis. But every time I go from altitude to ground level, I'm burning a huge amount of fuel to get down and get back up. And, there's a risk that's introduced when you land in a foreign place like that. So the best way to do it, I think, is to just outfit this plane so it has really long legs and stop, less.
So you're going to stop in a lot of places, you're going to completely skip Antarctica altogether.
Well, the plan is to land, Punta Arenas, Chile, southern tip of South America, directly to the South Pole, and then to land at King George Island, which is at the northern tip of Antarctica. And it's probably not necessary because I believe I have enough fuel. Winds will play into that. But I want to be able to touch foot on Antarctica to say that I landed on that continent.
Yeah.
Now, what I learned just the other day when we started to apply for the many, many permits that are required is that the handler is, I believe, going to be universal, needs to send somebody with me to King George Island, but I'm not going to stop at King George because the runway's too short.
Okay.
And it's gravel, and with that fuel load, I could never take off. So now we're trying to figure out, well, how do we get that guy there so he can do the handling? Right. Or maybe I just make King George my alternate, and I stop there in an emergency and then do it another day.
I was going to ask you, because my cousin Cruiser is the guy that runs the pump down there. And
really?
I wanted to make sure that, if you did, bring him a hoagie or something, because they got terrible food down there. It's all seal fat and everything.
Well, that hoagie would be worth it, except you can't bring anything foreign to Antarctica.
He won't tell anybody.
Well, here's the other thing.
Everything's foreign to Antarctica.
Any life type stuff, right?
Okay.
But here's the other thing. Fuel at Antarctica, since it has to be shipped
it's so expensive.
It starts around $22 a gallon.
Okay. What's normal price?
There is no normal price, but what I pay through High Performance Aircraft, I have a special deal with them, is about $3.50 a gallon.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm hoping that Epic Fuels will be one of my sponsors because it's...
Come on, Epic. Let's do this.
Let's do this. We're probably looking at, I don't know, for the next 2 years, I've calculated about 36,000 gallons of fuel that I'll need. Yeah. So, it's a lot of fuel.
So somewhere about King George Island, and that way you can touch down in Antarctica, but to be determined on that. And then what's the next northern point then from Antarctica? Is it South Africa then, or is it Tasmania, or what's it going to be?
Yeah, Tasmania would be too far.
Okay.
That, if fuel was not an issue, I'd like to go over there, instead of going back the same route or close to the same route. What I'm looking at, though, is the eastern tip of South America, which is Natal, Brazil. And it would be a short hop over to Africa. But I do want to go down to Durban because I've got a stay at one of the resorts down there, one of the game lodges. But that's actually a really long way. Madagascar is another place I want to stop. And the reason why I'm not giving you specific locations is because I know all that stuff is manageable. It's the Antarctic leg that's the hard part because I've done a lot of those places. I've flown in Africa before. So anyway, a lot of that will be determined by sponsors as well. If Signature Aviation or FBO comes on board, or Signature Flight Support, then I'll stop at a lot of their locations. And I'll lecture at a lot of those places. If somebody says, hey, Robert, we want you to stop here in Brazil because the Turbine Commander is now becoming a popular plane there, then I'm happy to stop there and lecture, and there'd be some exchange of services, I'm sure.
When you get past the South Pole then, and correct me because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but do you kind of just do a U-turn around the South Pole and head back north towards Brazil then? Or because it doesn't make sense that you would go down south and go around past the South Pole, like wave at it, and then keep on trucking. Like at some point you have to turn, right? Or do you?
Right. At some point I have to do a 180-degree turn.
Okay.
And I'll have GPS trackers, which are required, to prove I actually made it there.
Right.
2 of them, too. There's redundancy, just like, with the other things in the cockpit. So I'll basically fly over it, make a U-turn, come back and fly over it a second time. Right?
Show off.
Yeah. And to make sure I get it, right?
Yeah.
And then head back up to the tip of the continent, the northern
I got
tip.
you. Okay.
And then it's about 600 nautical miles back up to where I started from. And there's a few research stations along the way, not a lot, not very far down. There's one at the South Pole, of course. The problem is that if they send an aircraft to try and get you, if you do have to ditch, if it's a helicopter, they don't have the range.
Right.
So they're going to have to pre-position fuel. They have these Antonov Russian cargo planes.
And those are big enough.
Yeah, those are big enough, but now you got to have a flat spot to land that's safe, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to risk Antonov? I don't even know how much
gravel
cost.
runway. Oh my God! Yeah,
you can fit, I think, a C-130 in them. So
they're enormous. They're the biggest planes in the world, right? They're
Yeah.
nothing bigger than that.
I think so. I don't know if the Spruce Goose would have been bigger, but
Oh, but that doesn't count. That's not a real airplane. Like that's just
it's made out of wood, right?
It was made out of wood, and it flew once for that's not a real air. Yeah, it's enormous. Those things are bigger than C5s. You see a C5, and C5 is gigantic. So I want to, because we're not even anywhere near the North Pole. So South Pole, U-turn, come back, throw the beanbag out the window to prove you were there. Keep on flying up to Brazil, make a right turn at Africa.
Right, below the equator, because you have to pass 120 degrees different on the way up as compared to the way down to make it a circumnavigation.
Okay, so them's the rules. Okay.
Yeah. And then just up through Africa,
Uh-huh.
Maybe over to Madagascar if I can pull that off, because that sounds like a cool place to go.
Sure.
And then
they got great tacos.
Okay, I'll look for them.
Yeah.
And then up into northern Africa, right?
Right.
And
like
then,
Egypt or?
Yeah. And then, Gibraltar is Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there before. And then just up through Europe, and then probably over the top, maybe through Alaska.
Svalbard? Oh, okay.
Alaska, I'm saying that because Gleim Aviation has asked if I would, if I might be going that direction. So they're one of my sponsors. And if they had a reason for me to be there, I would do that route. I'm pretty flexible in terms of the route.
Right. Who's your fast food sponsor? Arby's?
No fast foods as of yet. I prefer something organic,
Okay. All right.
Just because the one planet, one people, one plane,
Oh, I thought you meant like one bathroom, one plane.
I have I have a bathroom on that plane, but I think it's going to be covered with a fuel tank.
Jesus.
So it has an evacuation tube, which is good for urinating.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
And then solids is a whole nother story.
Sure. Yeah.
I have that down though. You want to know, or
yeah, we want to know.
Most people want to know. So, if there's a co-pilot seat, you take a bag, and it's not like a little teeny shopping bag. It'll be a bigger one, right? And you stretch it. You put a hand on each side, and you stretch it between the two seats. And then, it's like a pilot to bombardier moment.
Yeah.
You got to be right on, and you use the bag, and you got some.
So just so you know, the combat has a version of that. Like you can't go to a porta potty because you'll get shot inside there, right? So you have a poo-poo no pee-pee bag because you just pee on the ground, and you have to burn this stuff, so you don't want there to be pee in the bag, and it's not nearly as accommodating. It's it's embarrassing and horrible, but it is how you have to go sometimes. So I can appreciate how that's going to be a unique air freshener once you're up there.
Well, yeah, because, even if you seal the bag,
Yeah.
your pressurization's changing as you land, so you're going to get some gases. And
A bad Dorito bag story.
I remember when I landed in Honolulu, they asked, if I had any food or waste, and I, handed them the bag, and everybody was like, trying to hold it at arm's length, and they put it in another bag.
I've been pooing in here.
And it sort of made me laugh. And then they kind of got the last laugh because on my bill it said $75, waste removal. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the most expensive, restroom trip I ever had.
Jesus, yeah.
So, no, but it's, if you're going to be in a plane that long, you're probably going to pass some solids, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to count. For a guy that has 15 pairs of sunglasses, you better have some way. Yeah, all in one. You better have a way to go poop. We're talking to Robert DeLaurentis, the Zen pilot, pole-to-poleflight.com, Flying Through Life on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that. Flying Through, THRU Life is the tag on all the social media, and it's an incredible tale. I want to ask you one more, then I'll let Phil ask questions because I've been running my mouth too long. So, okay, the northern part, is it similar where you do a U-turn and you try to go to, or some kind of turn and you go where you want to go, or?
No, I'll just go right over the top of it.
Okay. And then will Svalbard be part of the equation, or is it going to be the top of Sweden, or what's it going to be, do you think?
I don't know yet. Northern
You're
Europe.
not planning ahead very well, Robert.
Well, they called me a cowboy on the first trip. It really infuriated the handlers because they want to know a week in advance where you're going. And I said, I'll give you 24 hours. And that created some problems in places like Bali where the permit process was slow. But, it's kind of a seat of your pants on some of this. And somebody would make a recommendation, hey, you should stop in the Faroe Islands. And the Faroe Islands are often fogged in.
Yeah.
And, it's between like Scotland and Iceland. And I thought that sounds like the coolest place in the world to stop, and I hadn't really thought much about it until somebody suggested it. And it was one of the coolest places in the world to stop. I mean, just the beauty's amazing. I have a video of it on YouTube, but, imagine these really, really steep cliffs that are all green with waterfall, and then there's sheep all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And, the fjords, the glaciers form some of that stuff. It's just breathtaking. Sort of going day to day and, flying by the seat of my pants is not such a bad way to do it, And quite honestly, you can only really focus on that leg. And it'd be nice to be able to say, okay, I got this leg, this leg, this leg. But if you're a pilot and you're in the moment, right, which is a Zen type moment, and you're fully focused on staying alive, then all that the future doesn't matter. It's just what you're experiencing in that moment. So, and I don't have enough bandwidth to calculate in my brain, all these future stops. And I don't think really anybody can. Maybe there's somebody who's way smarter than me, and I know they're out there. But, staying focused. And then, it's kind of funny because you get back to the States after the trip's done, and you haven't processed any of it. You just, in your brain, have this leg, this leg, this leg. And it takes probably 6 months to just really put it all together. What were the lessons? What did that really mean when that happened? Why did that happen? I know I'm lucky to be alive after one of these trips, but, the implication can take way, way, way.
I kind of want you to take like a bag of mail, like San Diego to San Diego. Like, here you go, ma'am. And just post stamp it or something. That'd be great.
Well, it's interesting you say that because what we've come up with are these coins. And on one side, it has the one planet, one people, one plane, and it has a picture of the globe.
Yeah.
And we have an inspiring word. The first ones we're starting out with say courage, and they're serialized. And on the back, it has a picture of the citizen of the world with some stars above it. And it says 2018, 2019 polar circumnavigation. It has our web address. And the idea is to carry 1,000 of those. And they're lightweight aluminum. And I'll fly them. And then the idea is that people will buy them and then give them to aspiring pilots. Kind of like the AA coin, but for pilots, right? And they would carry it in their pocket until they became a pilot. And then they would fly it forward to another aspiring pilot. So, it'll be a piece of history. We're also carrying a humanity chip, which is basically a hard drive. And people can upload songs, pictures, poems, tweets, whatever, and we'll take it around the world with us. And it's a way to do it with less weight, right? It's like I could have a 50-pound bag of mail. These coins are lightweight. We anticipate about 30 pounds worth. We're hoping to sell them for $100 each. I had mentioned, there are products that we're selling rather than just asking for cash, although we do take that. These sunglasses, for example, Shade and Eyewear is very generous, and they're donating some money to the trip. Lift Aviation, we're coming up with a pair of pants, a short sleeve, long sleeve shirt that'll say Citizen of the World on them.
Sounds like you need some chaps, too, since you're such a cowboy.
Oh, man.
Aviation chaps.
The goal, and I appreciate that comment because being fashionable is always important, right?
Of course, yes.
And the idea behind the clothes is to be able to get out of the plane and go to your next appointment and still look good. And the flight suits from the 1940s or the bomber jackets, those are all old school and they don't appeal to the young kids.
Yeah.
So we wanted to have something super cool. And the headsets that I'll wear are made by Lightspeed. They'll be the Lightspeed Zen. And they'll be specially logoed. And then with each one of those, you get a DeLaurentis bag, which is a leather flight bag made by Lightspeed. They cost about $200, and they're going to be free with a purchase of those headsets.
Wow.
So, I was trying to take some of my business experience and apply it in the trip, to help support this and to raise money for the scholarships too. So, we have a fair number of products. There's these books that we're selling. We have a children's coloring book that is just so cool. It's the animation on it, or the creative work that's been done is amazing. We have a book that's going to be called The Little Plane That Could, kind of like the little engine that could.
Sure.
And it'll be the plane that I started flying, and it'll grow into a Turbine Commander 900. And as it goes around the world, it's going to meet a lot of people, and it'll come to realize that everybody's just one. That's what I'm most excited about. And then the third, major book, kind of like Zen Pilot and Flying Through Life, will be called Citizen of the World, to the Ends of the Earth and Beyond. And the beyond is not I'm going to the moon. The beyond is the spiritual component of it.
Sure. And you guys can find all of that stuff at poletopoleflight.com. Robert DeLaurentis is our guest. You can buy your skinny jeans there because we're appealing to the young kids.
I didn't say skinny.
Oh, I thought we were going to be hip. No, but
not that hip.
And that's a joke. But seriously, I dig you coming on. It's such a fantastic endeavor. You clearly think of everything, and it's so cool. And I don't know if you'll have time, but if you have time, let's zoom in and let me grab you mid-flight. So not mid-flight, like up in the unless you want to, but somewhere en route. Let's grab a show so we can check in, and I'll throw that thing right back up, and it'll be out there and people can follow your progress. I think it's such a fantastic thing. Our guest today that posted today is Jim DeFelice, and he wrote a book about the Pony Express.
Okay.
And you're very Pony Expressy. You're
That's
going
where the
station
chap
to
comment
station.
came in, right?
Well, because you said you were a cowboy, and it does tie into the pony, so for sure. But it's neat to have these things that link together, and the whole Shackleton exhibition, and what an crazy, impossible survival story that was. And I hope yours is much more simple and just as safe with a positive outcome, because it's fantastic.
Curious about how long you're spending. It's a 3-month journey for you, but when you arrive, what are your typical layovers? So are we talking a week? So you do have time to plan. Oh, I do want to go to Madagascar. Let me, file the paperwork to do that. What's a typical layover?
Yeah, that's a good question. The bigger consideration that sort of drives some of that is, I'll be over the South Pole on the 80th anniversary of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, AOPA. And one of your previous guests, Brian Keating, who's an astrophysicist, said, hey, you need to be over the pole January 1st. It's one of the longest, warmest days. So it'll be 24 hours of sunlight, but on the other side of the planet at the North Pole, it's darkness, right? So the longer I take to get up there, the more light I'm going to have. And it's looking like I'm going to have an infrared camera on the plane. It's made by Max Viz, the 1400. So hopefully we'll turn darkness into daylight with that system, but minimally 3 months. And when I stop in a place, again, it's just sort of by the seat of my pants. So I'll go, you know what, this is just a utility stop. There's nothing here. I'll leave tomorrow. But if it's somewhere in Patagonia, and the beauty is unbelievable and there's lots of things to see and there's lectures, people have asked me to lecture, then I'll stay longer. So I would say minimally overnight, and probably the most would maybe be a week. And, it's kind of funny because our following definitely grew on that first trip. And there were people that were staying up during all hours of the night to see if I made it. It's kind of like a NASCAR. Does anybody crash, It was funny because I was flying over the Indian Ocean, and the satellite device that I was used for tracking and texting and, all sorts of different types of communication, for some reason it just stopped about 50 miles off the coast.
Oh my gosh.
So everybody was freaking out, oh my God, Robert, ditched off
Went for a swim.
India. And it wasn't the case. It was technology can certainly fail you at times. We all know that with our phones and stuff. But so yeah, it's going to just really depend on what's going on. And in a perfect world, it would take 6 months, but I have commitments. So I'm thinking 3. And, the more fun I'm having, the more I'm going to stay. So, yeah, the world's out there. There are people to meet and interact with. And this will be a defining moment, I think for me, but also for aviation.
Yeah, that's cool.
We're bringing everything. It's kind of like a solar eclipse. Everybody's focused on one thing at one time. And there's a lot of power in that moment, And certainly this will be more than just one short moment like that. But, the more people we get thinking about aviation, talking about it, getting interested in it, the better. And, the world peace component of this is huge too, right? It's the common thread that joins the South Pole and the North Pole and everybody in between. So I'm hoping it's going to have a lot of positive effects. We're really going for it in every way.
I love it.
Really is a Zen pilot.
Yeah, he's a Zen pilot, and you are Robert DeLaurentis. And again, pole2poleflight.com is the website. Thank you again for coming on the Break It Down show. Fascinating. And please, if you get time, we would love to have you do another hour remotely. You pick the place, Patagonia, in your airplane, whatever. We're glad to have you on again.
Just one funny story to end it.
Please.
When I was writing Zen Pilot, I gave it to a few people to read to get feedback. And one of my buddies in Switzerland, a guy named Andre, gave it to his wife. And she read the book and he goes, "You really messed my life up for me." And I go, "Well, how did I mess your life up for you by giving you this book?" And he goes, "Well, my wife keeps saying, hey, you should be more like Robert, that Zen pilot, So I guess there's pluses and minuses. But, thank you for having me on your show. It's a major component of this trip is getting the word out, getting people involved, maybe inspired, I hope. That's a big piece of this. Inspiring people to go do, what they think might be impossible, too.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Thanks again to Brian Keating.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Robert DeLaurentis.
Thanks, guys.